Hello again. Welcome to our Wholeness series and our week on physical wholeness. Hopefully you're really enjoying this series as we all walk together on a journey towards greater wholeness in our body, in our soul, and in our spirit. And it's a real pleasure to be joined by Ben Murray. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Ben is a father of 5. He works for the NHS and he attends a live Lincoln location. He's been in the church for years. He's really passionate about the men's ministry within the church, and Ben's a real gift to the church. And I'd really love us to hear Ben's story, to hear a little bit about your journey towards physical wholeness. So let's kick off by hearing about where you've been and where you are now and the little bit in between.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I've always been a bigger guy. And I guess my personality matched my body size. Okay. So I lived life to excess. So I was a bigger guy with a big personality, and I found it really hard to disconnect my body with my mindset. So I would constantly be thinking about myself in a really down way. I'm really big, and I lived in a really limited way. So my mindset was affected by my physicality. So because I was so large, I'd instantly put barriers between myself and opportunity. And as a result, I'd then become full of regret, or even a little bit of jealousy of other people taking opportunities that I could have had because I was so big and I stopped myself doing it.
Right.
And then towards the end of 2018, life took a turn south. So we lost a baby. As a couple, me and Emma suffered a miscarriage, and then I lost my mum. And Christmas just seemed to be really heavy, like lots of emotional things going on, and it was really easy for me to then fall into the bad habits of turning to food and drink to get myself through that situation. So again, for me, physicality and mindset are completely connected. In order to be physically whole, you have to have all the other things that you've talked about in your series added together. And so for me, mindset was terrible, and I turned to drink and food aplenty, like you would do at Christmas, but it was just accelerated to even greater extent. And it really came to a head in February where my health had taken a massive turn. I'd started to get the onset arthritis in my hip. I had stomach issues. My asthma was terrible. And Emma was saying to me, you need to go forward for prayer for healing. You need to go forward for prayer for healing. And again, this is where my physical attitude affected my mindset. And I would say, I'm not going to go forward for prayer because there are people there with genuine things. And this isn't a genuine thing. And she was like, it is, you're in pain. And I said to her, but I'm in pain because I'm eating too much. I'm in pain because I've treated my body terribly, and I felt ashamed going to God and asking for God for prayer for the way that I treated my body. And I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I felt compelled to say, I can't ask for forgiveness because I'm still treating my body in this way.
Right, yeah.
And then I had a really big prayer session where I said to Jesus, I'm at my wit's end. I can't take any more. I'm not hearing from you. He was there. I just turned off hearing him. I'm not hearing from you anymore, Jesus. What should I be doing? And I was scrolling through Instagram. We live our lives on it. I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across this really corny thing, but it really hit a nerve with me. And it said that our God is a God that can move mountains, but don't be afraid if He hands you a shovel. And I thought to myself, actually, this is it. Like, I know that God would be able to heal my physically of all my ailments, but I also know that He wants me to work at it at the same time. And so that's what started my transformation journey, in that aspect of, actually, I need to roll my sleeves up, take some accountability for what I've done to my body, and change my attitude towards going to Jesus for prayer for healing, rather than now I need to ask Him for strength, I need to ask Him for perseverance, I need to ask Him to get me through this really tough session and this really tough season in order for me to hear Him better. So I used to go to Jesus with a shopping list of everything that I wanted to achieve, and now I go to Him as a friend, as a counsellor, and really try and lean on Him to get me through a difficult session, and then go back with a prayer of thankfulness afterwards.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And there's a few things, you mentioned this idea of shame.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes with physical wholeness, if it is overeating or something like that, it's very obvious for everybody to see, isn't it? Because you literally wear it on your body.
Yeah.
And so this sense of shame that you might feel that would stop you going for the job opportunities, but even stop you going forward for prayer.
Yeah.
What would you say to people who just feel this sense of shame because of their physical body?
Firstly, you've got to recognise that Jesus loves you. Whatever condition you're in currently, whatever you've done in the past, that whatever you're going to do in the future, Jesus' love is unconditional. And it's all about focusing not on the failings, but focusing on the forgiveness.
Yeah.
So Jesus' forgiveness is there, and we have to be honest with ourselves and think, actually, like, I am sinning by overeating. I am sinning by living a life of excess, but I've been forgiven for it.
Yeah.
And so to make small steps of thinking, I am whole in Christ, I need to move forward in a different identity and think of myself in a different way. But I'd also really strongly suggest that people buddy up with other people.
Great. Okay.
And so lean on the body of Christ around us to think, I'm not strong enough to get through it myself. I used to think that I'm strong enough to get through everything, and I had to have a little bit of a pride situation where I said, I need to fall on somebody else. And luckily I've got a really strong wife that I can fall on. She might be small in stature, but she's mighty in power. And she was my rock at the time when I really needed her, and was really honest with me and would say to me, you need to lose weight. Like, you need to be a different you, because the you are now isn't happy. And so it's about a combination of things. It's about having the belief that Jesus loves you, because he does. It's about the belief that you are strong enough within you to make the change, and it's about having people around you that's going to keep you accountable to the journey that you're about to start.
Great, that's great wisdom. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about this idea of forgiveness sets you free. Because it's the truth, isn't it? We know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. But when we get stuck in shame and unforgiveness, then we are a bit paralysed, aren't we?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
We can't move forward.
Yeah, so I think anybody who knows me would normally say, oh, Ben, you're so passionate about self-development, so passionate about bringing other people through stuff. And it's easy then to forget about yourself.
Yeah.
So it's so easy to be outward focused and thinking about how you're going to help other people move through situations, that you forget to actually have a bit of self-care.
Right,
and think,
okay.
actually, I need to soak in Jesus, with Jesus, about how I need to change myself to go forward.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about this holistic idea of wholeness, how your physical wholeness affected your mental wholeness and your mindset. So let's hear a little bit about the kind of intersection of all these different areas of wholeness in your body, in your soul, and in your spirit, and how now has your physical wholeness impacted all these other areas?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I needed structure in order to combat everything that had happened. And so now I have moved the hours of the day, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so I used to live my life like everybody else. I used to wake up at 7, groggily go to work, get through the day by eating and drinking snacks all around me, coming home, not having any time with the family, feeling rushed, so rushed all the time. And I really realised that I'd have to develop a new structure to my life to get me through it. A structure that was separate from anything else, in a way that I needed time for myself, I needed time with Jesus, I needed time for some physical activity, I needed time with my family, I needed time with work, and I needed to be able to put time on each aspect rather than just saying I was busy. I needed to realise how full different aspects of my life was.
Yeah. So tell us, what do you do now? So what time do you get up? I'm intrigued.
So my alarm goes off at between 4:45 and 10:05.
Wow.
Which is
well
really early, thanks ever so much. And my day now starts with a coffee downstairs.
Right.
That's the first thing. But between 5 and 5:30, I have a time of reflection and planning for the day. So I spend a lot of it talking to Jesus about what the plan is for the day. And my gym session, I know it sounds really weird, but I talk through each exercise that I'm going to do with Christ to make sure that I'm going into it with an open mindset. I'm not going into it with a fixed mindset. I'm going into it with one that's going to be growing all the way through the session. I'm praying for strength and praying for a lack of pride, so I'm not going in and lifting a weight that I can't lift. So I spend some time talking to Jesus about my day. And then I go to the gym. So I'm at the gym for between 5:30 and 5:45.
Wow.
I do the gym 6 days a week, and I'm there for an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. I catch the train at 20 to 8 in the morning, and I'm at work for 8:30, and then my day can start. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people, when I say it, is like, flipping heck, there's no way I'd be able to do that. And I was exactly the same. But it's about making small, sustainable steps forward, rather than thinking I need to do lunar jumps to get forward. It's about taking these small baby steps and making repeatable and sustainable changes to your life, rather than thinking I'm going to change overnight.
Yeah.
It's about thinking, what can I change today to make tomorrow a little bit easier? So I never used to get up before 5, and now I find it quite easy. If anything, if I have too much sleep, I find it really, really struggling to get through the day. the interesting thing through all of this is I'm the annoying person on the train, actively talking to people and engaging people and reading my email.
Oh, it's you. You're that annoying person.
Guy. And I look around and I see the other commuters asleep, struggling to be awake and really struggling to get their day started. And for me, that's been transformational.
Yeah.
In terms of, I really appreciate the time that I've got. We have a very short time on earth to sing our song, and I want to make sure that I've got the energy to sing it to its fullest. And I see people struggling with the concept of time and rushing, and now I've decided to be intentional and purposeful and carve time out for me and make my time work rather than me working for time.
Wow. So just hearing what you say, like just the very structure of your day speaks to me of spiritual wholeness, emotional wholeness, physical wholeness.
Yeah.
So it's all really interlinked.
Definitely.
How has it affected your relational wholeness?
Oh, it's ridiculously different how it was. I mean, I've always had a really strong relationship with my wife, which I'm incredibly thankful of. But my kids have a better dad. My wife has a better husband in terms of she used to worry about asking me if I wanted to do something at a weekend because, again, I'd limit myself.
Right.
So even small stuff like parking away from church, if it was a long walk, I'd be like, there's no way we're parking that far. I won't have time. I'm going to huff and puff and I'll be aching by the time I got to church. To now, we don't have that issue. So we discuss things less and we have a lot more open conversations, but my kids have noticed a massive difference. So now I'm the dad that will sweep up Hector onto my shoulders and run up hills with him. I'm the dad that has started to go for runs with Edie, who's 6, and Hector, who's 3. We now go for short runs together. They have a dad that's happy to be here and happy to be around. We went to jump last weekend, and Emma was up in the balcony with Fletcher feeding him, and when we all got together as a family, again, she had tears in her eyes, and I said, Emma, like, what's wrong? And she said, I'm just so happy to see you like this. You're one of the happy dads. And when I look at Edie and Hector and them smiling at me with pride, that's what's keeping me going. So the days that I don't want to exercise are the days that I have the best workouts. And I think the days that I don't want to go to Jesus with prayer because I'm struggling with an issue are the days that I have the best conversations with Jesus. So I think it's about stepping outside of the limits we put on ourselves and recognising that we serve an almighty God where there is no boundaries. He's boundless. And we put so many boundaries on ourselves that we're living a really limited life. And me losing weight is a small step towards living a boundless life.
What an amazing theme of transformation through all of these areas, and it just seems like you're living in this sense of wholeness.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm just reminded of that Ephesians 3:20, God can do exceedingly and abundantly more, and I just feel there's this exceedingly abundantly more in your life.
Thanks.
So how's God revealed himself to you? You've talked about him being boundless and full of love. Are there any particular verses, or is there a particular part of his character that he's revealed to you through this journey?
So I've always had the sense that God is a father figure, and I think losing my mum has made me have a whole sense of God as parent rather than just father figure. I've really got the concept that when I'm struggling, he's not just the father figure with his arm around me. He's the mother figure that I'm falling into the lap of and crying with. He's the parental figure that is singing a song over me when I'm finding things really difficult. And so I guess the biggest thing in terms is we know that we are able to do all things with Christ in us. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that gets me through a lot of the situations that I find myself in at the minute, is the knowledge that I am whole in Christ. I might not be whole on earth yet, but I know I'm going to be there if I keep taking these small steps forward and not beating myself up if I slip backwards. Yeah. So a lot of people ask me about my diet, ask me about a cheat day. And for me, I don't like the term cheat day because it's not a cheat. Like, I have to live life. I have to live a whole life of eating food still that's normal. But it's about the next day getting straight back onto plan. And I think through all of this, I've realised that no matter what's happening, Jesus is constantly there. And I think that shame thing that we talked about earlier on previously, my mindset would be, I've messed up. I don't want to go to Jesus. I need that prolonged period of time away from God in order for me to account for what I've done.
Oh, okay. Like a purgatory.
Yeah, that's
it. Away,
yeah,
paying for my sins.
And I guess like what happened on a normal diet, it'd be like, I've cheated on the Friday, so I'll have Saturday and Sunday off my diet, and then I'll start
Got to
again on
wait till
Monday.
Yeah.
And Monday will never come.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a Monday. And if you think about, I'll go back to Jesus on Monday once I've had the weekend, Monday will come and you'll find it harder and harder. So I guess for me, that whole thing of realising that Jesus is there constantly, with me when I mess up, and with me when we're planning on how we're going to move forward and be a success.
Okay, I love that, and I absolutely love what you said about that you're already whole, and that's right, isn't it? Yeah. We are already whole. We're already seated in the heavenly realms.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's a working out and obedience for us to do. Yeah. And sometimes that image you brought at the beginning about having to move the mountain, God sometimes gives us a bit of a shovel. Yeah. Sometimes we just pick up our shovel through being discouraged or messing up, and we just carry on our journey of wholeness.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so for those that are watching that are really resonating with what you're saying, because I'm sure that people are coming up to you now, how did you do it? Give me some
constantly.
advice. So what would you say to us? And also, before we finish, I'd love to hear your grand total of what you'd lost. So let's hear your advice. What would you say to people when they're discouraged, when they're feeling ashamed? Because it might not just be a physical, it might not be a weight thing, it might be something else that isn't so obvious. But what would you say to people, what God taught you, and then give us your grand total, because it's incredibly inspiring.
Okay. So we talk a lot in modern terms about being resilient. And a lot of people think resilient is a tree standing in a field, being battered by the seasons and still standing there. And I've realised through my journey that resilience is about having a strong network of people around you, keeping you accountable to the plans that you commit to. And so what I would say to anybody is make the change today. Start living life in a different way and thinking about things differently. About planning small, sustainable steps forward. So it could be, if you, for example, want to stop smoking, thinking about, well, actually, I'm going to smoke less cigarettes today, rather than thinking I'm going to stop smoking completely. It's about limiting exposures to something that you know you're going to struggle with. Allowing yourself to mess up and not putting yourself into a loser mindset, and actually into a winner mindset, and thinking actually it's okay that I've made this mistake because I'm going to learn from it. So small, sustainable, repeatable steps forward, and giving yourself the opportunity to learn continually. Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant advice. I love it. And all soaked in this idea of grace, that there's just so much grace for us, and just a God that is for us and loves us.
Definitely. And it's like we've said constantly, it's that grace that God loves us and is for us. And actually we need to be grace-filled for ourselves, and thinking about actually God does love us, and it's okay that I'm like this.
That's great. So give us your grand total, Ben. We're all dying to hear what's happened with your transformation in terms of numbers.
So from February 2019 to December 2019, I lost a third of my body weight.
Wow.
So I lost 7 stone in total.
Amazing.
I've got another couple of stone that I'd quite like to lose. But yeah, I'm the same size now that I was when I was 16. So my 17-year-old daughter has never seen me like this. My wife's never seen me like this. So I'm living in a completely different body and having a different life altogether.
That's amazing, and an amazing loss. But I guess we're not focusing as much on the loss as all the gains.
Definitely.
How much? So what is it that you've gained?
So I've gained a strong network of people around me at the gym, of people that I would never get into contact with, who give me an opportunity to talk about Jesus.
Great, love that.
I've gained a better relationship with my family. My wife's gained a stronger, fitter husband with a more open mindset. My kids have got somebody that they can look at and aspire to be, rather than somebody that I felt they were ashamed of. They weren't, but again, it's that self-limiting thought. And I've gained the mindset that I am capable, fully capable of achieving what God has already planned for me. I just need to go to Him continually with an open heart, an open mind, and open ears, and be obedient to Him.
Love that. You are such a great and inspiring example of walking, talking physical wholeness, but also not just that, how it affects all these other areas of wholeness in our mind, in our body, and in our spirit. Thank you so much, Ben, for being with us.
Thank you.
How inspiring was that? And this is such a good thing about being in connect groups, is we're not on our own. Ben talked about the importance of being in community, of being honest, of not being ashamed about where we're at, but just being open and making the right changes today with people around us to support us. So it would be a great opportunity to pray for one another in our physical wholeness. How can we walk into greater physical wholeness? And now there'll be some great discussion questions up on the screen for you to discuss before or after you pray. Have a fantastic week.